palace thought the secret was buried forever, until Edward's legal team reportedly uncovered documents tying Princess Charlotte's future royal status directly to a private agreement Charles never wanted exposed. And the moment those papers surfaced behind closed palace walls, insiders say the atmosphere inside the monarchy changed instantly. Because suddenly this was no longer just about Edward, or James, or a forgotten promise made to Prince Philip. This was about a hidden succession strategy quietly shaping the royal family years in advance, while the public was distracted by Harry, Meghan, Andrew, and scandal after scandal exploding across the front pages.
King Charles has named his youngest brother, Prince Edward, the Duke of Edinburgh, a title held, of course, by his late father, Prince Philip, for more than 70 years.
What makes this situation so dangerous is not simply the existence of the agreement. Royal families survive on secret understandings all the time. What terrified people inside the palace was the alleged timing of it. According to whispers now spreading through royal circles, Edward's lawyers were never supposed to find the Charlotte clause this early. The arrangement was reportedly designed to stay buried until after Edward's death, quietly activated later when William eventually inherited more control over royal titles. But legal restructuring surrounding Edward's dukedom allegedly forced lawyers to review old title frameworks connected to Edinburgh, Wessex, and dormant succession pathways. And that is where things started unraveling. Because once they began tracing the legal chain connected to the Duke of Edinburgh title, the pattern suddenly became impossible to ignore. Everything pointed towards Charlotte, not James, not Edward's son, Charlotte. And insiders claim the realization hit Edward's team like a bomb detonating in slow motion. For years, the public believed Charles had finally honored Prince Philip's dying wish by granting Edward the Duke of Edinburgh title in 2023. Headlines celebrated it as an emotional reunion between father and son beyond the grave. Edward waited decades. Philip wanted it preserved through his line. The promise appeared fulfilled. Simple, clean, respectful. But behind the ceremony and carefully staged palace smiles sat one devastating detail almost nobody noticed in real time. The title was never truly Edward's to keep. It was borrowed, temporary, an arrangement with an expiration date hidden deep inside legal language ordinary people would never think to examine. And according to insiders, Edward's lawyers recently realized the expiration was not created to protect the monarchy. It was allegedly created to protect Charlotte's future path specifically. That changes everything, because suddenly the question becomes brutal. If the monarchy already planned Charlotte's future role years ago, then how many people inside the family were quietly sacrificed to clear the road for her? And that is where Charles reportedly became stunned. Not angry at first, not defensive, stunned. Because the legal discovery allegedly exposed just how obvious the pattern looked once all the pieces were placed side by side. James loses the hereditary future of Edinburgh. Edward receives a lifetime-only title. Charlotte remains perfectly positioned to inherit the recreated dignity later under William's reign. Every obstacle removed before the public even realized a game was being played. Insiders say Edward initially stayed silent after the documents surfaced because silence is how he survives. Edward learned that lesson decades ago when the press destroyed him after the Marine scandal, mocked him over ardent productions, and treated him like the weak prince nobody respected. He became the royal who endured humiliation quietly while others exploded publicly. But this time, according to palace whispers, Sophie was furious. And people inside royal circles know something important about Sophie. She rarely loses control publicly, which is exactly why palace aides reportedly panicked when word spread that she had privately confronted advisors over James being written out before adulthood. That phrase allegedly rattled people. Written out before adulthood. Because it framed James not as an unfortunate casualty of royal restructuring, but as a deliberate removal. And the deeper Edward's lawyers reportedly looked, the stranger the situation became. The legal team allegedly discovered references connecting the future handling of the Edinburgh title to continuity planning surrounding the next female line of senior monarchy. That wording immediately triggered speculation about Charlotte because there is only one young female royal currently positioned perfectly for that symbolic transfer. A future princess royal, possibly even a future queen. And suddenly, old rumors from late 2022 started resurfacing all over again. Rumors that Charlotte was always intended to receive Edinburgh eventually. Rumors that Charles personally approved the structure. Rumors that Camilla supported it behind the scenes because she preferred power consolidated tightly around William's immediate family rather than extended branches of the monarchy. And once Camilla's name entered the conversation, the atmosphere reportedly became radioactive because Sophie Sophie's long history with Diana has never fully disappeared beneath the surface. Palace insiders have whispered for years that Camilla never completely trusted Sophie after the Diana years, especially because Sophie remained personally warm toward Diana during the breakdown of Charles's marriage. Most people backed away from Diana when palace pressure intensified. Sophie allegedly did not, and some insiders now believe old emotional scars may have influenced newer institutional decisions far more than the public understands. That possibility is what reportedly terrified Charles, because now the narrative escaping palace walls is not simply that Edward received a temporary dukedom. The narrative becoming dangerous is that the monarchy strategically reshaped an entire bloodline to prepare a future inheritance path for Charlotte while quietly sidelining Edward's family. If James was never considered a threat, why was the system allegedly redesigned around stopping him anyway? And that is exactly where the fear inside the palace reportedly shifted from legal anxiety into full emotional panic. Because once Edward's lawyers allegedly connected the dots between the temporary Edinburgh structure and Charlotte's future position, another terrifying possibility started spreading quietly through royal corridors. What if Edward himself never fully understood the long-term implications when he accepted the title from Charles in 2023? Think about the timing. Philip was dead. The Queen was gone. Edward had waited nearly a quarter of a century for the promise attached to his father's legacy. By that stage, he was exhausted, older, publicly loyal, and deeply conditioned never to challenge the institution openly. Insiders claim the palace presented the dukedom almost like a peace offering, a final gesture of family unity after years of speculation that Charles might refuse Philip's wish entirely. Cameras flashed, statements were released, smiles were carefully performed for the public, and Britain moved on believing the story had reached its happy ending. But according to whispers now leaking from people close to the legal review, the real ending had already been quietly rewritten before Edward even stepped into the role. Because the moment lawyers allegedly uncovered references to Charlotte's future pathway, the Edinburgh title stopped looking like a gift and started looking like a bridge, a temporary holding arrangement, a carefully managed transition mechanism designed to keep the title warm until the monarchy was ready to move it into William's direct line permanently. And once people inside royal circles started viewing it through that lens, suddenly every strange decision surrounding Edward's family began looking different. James being denied automatic inheritance no longer looked accidental. The life peerage structure no longer looked administrative. Even the years of hesitation before Charles granted the title suddenly looked strategic rather than emotional. It was as if the palace had spent years constructing a legal maze while hoping nobody would ever stand high enough to see the pattern from above. And then came the detail that allegedly shook Edward's legal advisors more than anything else. Sources claim buried inside one section of private correspondence connected to succession planning was language describing Charlotte as the intended long-term stabilizing continuation of the Edinburgh dignity. That phrase reportedly spread through insiders like wildfire because it sounded less like casual discussion and more like premeditated institutional planning. Intended long-term continuation. Not possible continuation, not hypothetical continuation. Intended. Suddenly, the entire structure surrounding Edward's title looked predetermined from the beginning. What makes this explosive is not simply Charlotte's name. Charlotte herself has done absolutely nothing wrong. By all accounts, she is adored publicly, protected fiercely by William and Catherine, and viewed by palace insiders as one of the monarchy's safest future figures. The danger comes from what the alleged agreement implies about everybody else. Because if Charlotte's path was quietly protected years ago, then somebody had to be moved out of the way first. And according to the rumors now consuming palace gossip circles, Edward's family may have been sacrificed to accomplish it. Insiders claim Charles reportedly became deeply unsettled once he realized how Edward's team interpreted the documents, because from that point onward, the situation stopped being about legal wording and became something far more dangerous. Motive, intent, family betrayal. Palace officials can defend complicated constitutional structures all day long. What becomes harder to defend is the appearance that one branch of the family was emotionally managed while another branch was strategically elevated behind closed doors. And according to whispers now spreading among royal staffers, Charles allegedly feared one specific outcome more than anything else. Not public criticism, not headlines, not even political fallout. He feared William discovering how early Charlotte's future had allegedly been discussed within institutional planning conversations before William himself fully controlled the system. Because if true, that would mean people around Charles had already started quietly designing the future shape of the monarchy while multiple younger royals were still children. That realization reportedly made several insiders deeply uncomfortable. It suggested the institution was no longer simply reacting to crises involving Harry, Meghan, or Andrew. It was proactively restructuring the bloodline years ahead of time, deciding who would matter later and who would slowly disappear into ceremonial ceremonial irrelevance. But the problem with silence inside royal history is that it rarely stays silent forever. Diana stayed silent for years before everything detonated publicly. Harry stayed quiet until he suddenly didn't. Even Charles himself spent decades trapped behind palace image management before his private frustrations eventually surfaced. The monarchy survives on emotional suppression until one person finally reaches the point where silence becomes impossible to maintain. And according to whispers now circulating among royal watchers, some people close to Edward fear James may eventually become that person for his generation. Not because he wants revenge, but because he now fully understands what happened to him. He understands his grandfather reportedly wanted the Edinburgh legacy preserved through Edward's line. He understands Charles changed the structure. He understands the title now dies with his father. And according to the rumors consuming palace circles right now, he allegedly understands that another royal child's future may have been prioritized over his long before he was old enough to object. That realization changes people, especially inside a family where hierarchy determines identity from birth. Meanwhile, Sophie reportedly remains one of the most quietly furious figures in the entire situation because, unlike many senior royals, she actually witnessed what Edward endured privately for decades. The humiliation, the mockery, the press attacks, the constant implication that he was weak, unserious, disposable. She watched him rebuild his image slowly through loyalty and duty, while other members of the family collapsed into scandal after scandal. And after all of that, according to insiders, the reward they allegedly received was a temporary dukedom and a son permanently cut out of Philip's direct legacy. That bitterness reportedly never fully left the room once Edward's legal team uncovered the Charlotte connection. And now, palace insiders fear the one thing the monarchy always fears most. Not scandal, not controversy, not even public anger. They fear competing narratives inside the family itself. Because once royal bloodlines start privately questioning whether outcomes were predetermined years in advance, trust inside the institution begins collapsing from the inside out. Every title becomes suspicious. Every promotion looks strategic. Every silence starts feeling forced. And according to the whispers now echoing through royal circles, Charles may have accidentally created the exact thing he spent years trying to avoid. Another deeply wounded branch of the royal family quietly carrying resentment beneath perfectly controlled public smiles. The palace can deny rumors. It can manage headlines. It can bury legal language inside centuries-old constitutional structures. But what it cannot fully control anymore is perception. And right now, the perception spreading through royal gossip circles is devastating. That Edward was never truly given Philip's legacy. He was only asked to protect it temporarily until the crown was finally ready to place it somewhere else entirely.